There are champions, there are legends, and then there is Mike Tyson, a man who became the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history. A fighter so terrifying that many opponents believed they had already lost before the opening bell even rang. His knockouts became worldwide sensations. His fame reached every corner of the planet. At his peak, he earned hundreds of millions of dollars and seemed unstoppable. But behind the terrifying power, the cold stare, and the devastating punches was a frightened child growing up in one of America's toughest neighborhoods. A child surrounded by crime, violence, poverty, and fear. His journey would take him from the streets of Brooklyn to the top of the boxing world, only to lose everything. This is the incredible story of Iron Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was born on June 30th, 1966, in Brooklyn, New York. Life was difficult from the very beginning. His family struggled with poverty. His father was absent for most of his childhood, leaving his mother, Lorna Tyson, to raise the family alone. Brooklyn in the late 1960s and early 1970s was far from an easy place to grow up. Violence, gangs, robberies, and drugs were part of everyday life. For young Mike, surviving each day became a challenge. Although people remember Tyson as one of the toughest men who ever lived, the truth is that he was a shy and quiet child. He spoke with a noticeable lisp. Other children often bullied him. Instead of feeling powerful, he often felt scared. But there was one thing that brought him happiness: pigeons. Mike loved raising pigeons on rooftops. They became his escape from the violence surrounding him. One day, another boy grabbed one of Mike's favorite pigeons and snapped its neck in front of him. Something changed inside Tyson. Filled with rage, he attacked the boy. Years later, Tyson said that was the first real fight of his life, the moment he realized he could fight. As he grew older, his life continued to spiral in the wrong direction. He joined street gangs. He stole. He robbed people. Before turning 13, Mike Tyson had already been arrested dozens of times. Most people believed he was simply another troubled kid whose future would end in prison. But fate had different plans. Because of his repeated arrests, Tyson was eventually sent to a juvenile detention center. It was there that everything changed. One of the counselors noticed that Mike possessed extraordinary strength and incredible natural athletic ability. He introduced him to a boxing trainer. Soon after, Tyson met the man who would completely transform his life: Cus D'Amato. At first glance, Cus didn't just see another troubled teenager. He saw greatness. While everyone else saw a criminal, Cus saw a future heavyweight champion. He believed Tyson possessed something that could not be taught: fearlessness, explosive speed, natural punching power, and an unmatched desire to fight. Cus invited Tyson into his gym. Eventually, Mike moved into Cus D'Amato's home. For the first time in his life, Tyson found stability, discipline, and someone who truly believed in him. To Mike, Cus wasn't simply a coach. He became the father Mike had never really had. Every day began before sunrise: training, running, shadowboxing, bag work, endless repetitions. Cus believed that champions were built through discipline, not talent alone. He also taught Tyson something even more important: confidence. Cus constantly repeated one message: "You are going to become the heavyweight champion of the world." At first, Mike couldn't believe it, but hearing those words every single day slowly changed the way he saw himself. Cus also developed the fighting style that would make Tyson famous: the peekaboo style, with constant head movement, explosive footwork, relentless pressure, and devastating combinations thrown from close range. Tyson became incredibly difficult to hit, yet terrifying to fight. His speed looked impossible for a heavyweight. His power seemed unnatural. By the age of 16, experienced amateur boxers struggled to survive against him. It was becoming obvious. The boxing world had never seen anyone quite like Mike Tyson, and this was only the beginning. By the early 1980s, one thing had become clear: Mike Tyson wasn't just another talented young boxer, he was a once-in-a-generation athlete. Every sparring session seemed to end the same way. Experienced fighters were being overwhelmed by a teenager who combined explosive speed with unbelievable power. Cus D'Amato knew Tyson was ready for the professional stage, but before Mike could fulfill his destiny, tragedy struck. On November 4th, 1985, Cus D'Amato passed away from pneumonia at the age of 77. Tyson was only 19 years old. The man who had rescued him from the streets, the man who believed in him before anyone else, was gone. Mike later admitted that losing Cus felt like losing his father all over again. Although devastated, Tyson made a promise to himself: he would become world champion for Cus. Mike made his professional debut on March 6, 1985. From the very first fight, fans realized they were watching something special. Unlike many heavyweight boxers, Tyson didn't waste time studying his opponents. The moment the bell rang, he attacked. His head constantly moved from side to side. His feet were incredibly fast. He slipped punches with ease before exploding forward with devastating hooks and uppercuts. His combinations were unlike anything the heavyweight division had ever seen. Within months, knockouts became routine. Fight after fight ended before the audience had even settled into their seats. Commentators struggled to describe what they were witnessing. Some called him the next Muhammad Ali. Others believed he was even more dangerous. By the end of his first professional year, Tyson had already built an incredible record. Nearly every victory came by knockout. His popularity exploded across America. People didn't buy tickets to watch 12 rounds. They bought tickets hoping to witness another spectacular knockout. Then came November 22nd, 1986. One night, one opportunity, one chance to make history. Standing across the ring was Trevor Berbick, the reigning WBC heavyweight champion. Tyson was just 20 years old. Most champions reach the top after years of experience. Tyson arrived before most fighters had even reached their physical prime. From the opening bell, he looked unstoppable. His pressure never stopped. Berbick tried to survive, but Tyson kept cutting off the ring, landing brutal combinations to the head and body. In the second round, everything changed. A crushing combination sent Berbick crashing to the canvas. He somehow stood up, but his legs betrayed him. He stumbled across the ring, collapsed again, and struggled desperately to stay on his feet. The referee stopped the fight. Mike Tyson had become the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history, a record that still stands today, at only 20 years, 4 months, and 22 days old. Iron Mike ruled the heavyweight division. Winning the title wasn't enough. Tyson wanted every championship belt. Over the next 2 years, he dismantled some of the biggest names in boxing: James Smith, Tony Tucker, Larry Holmes, Tony Tubbs, Michael Spinks. Each victory strengthened his reputation. Many opponents entered the ring already terrified. Some admitted years later that Tyson's stare during the introductions was more frightening than the punches themselves. His ring walks became legendary. No flashy entrance, no music, no dancing, just black trunks, black shoes, a white towel with a hole cut through the middle, and the cold stare of a man who looked ready to destroy anyone standing in front of him. The simplicity made him even more intimidating. There were no distractions, only one purpose: to knock his opponent out. Perhaps no fight better captured Tyson's dominance than his showdown with Michael Spinks in 1988. Spinks entered the fight undefeated. He was considered one of the best boxers in the world. Many believed he possessed the intelligence to challenge Tyson. The anticipation was enormous. Millions tuned in. The fight lasted just 91 seconds. Tyson stormed forward immediately. One devastating combination sent Spinks to the canvas. Moments later, another brutal punch ended the fight. 91 seconds. One of the biggest fights in boxing history. Ended before many viewers had even found their seats. At that moment, Mike Tyson wasn't simply the heavyweight champion. He was the biggest star in sports. He appeared on magazine covers around the world. Television networks fought for the rights to broadcast his fights. Children wanted to be like him. Adults feared him. Promoters built entire events around his name. For many fans, Tyson seemed invincible. But while the world admired the champion, the cracks behind the scenes were already beginning to appear. Without Cus D'Amato, Tyson no longer had the one person capable of controlling his life. His inner circle slowly changed. Money attracted people with selfish intentio. Luxury replaced discipline. Fame replaced focus. And the habits that had made him unstoppable slowly began to disappear. No one knew it yet, but the fall of Iron Mike had already begun. For years, Mike Tyson looked untouchable. Every opponent seemed to fall. Every fight reinforced the belief that no heavyweight on earth could stop him. But outside the ring, Tyson's life was becoming increasingly chaotic. The discipline that had once defined him slowly disappeared. The people surrounding him were no longer mentors. They were employees, friends, and advisors who rarely challenged his decisions. Money was flowing faster than ever. Luxury cars, mansions, jewelry, wild parties. The young man who had once trained with relentless focus was now living a very different life. In 1988, Tyson married actress Robin Givens. The marriage quickly became one of the most talked about relationships in America. It was filled with public arguments, accusations, and constant media attention. Just 1 year later, the couple divorced. The separation became front-page news, and Tyson's personal life seemed to be falling apart. Many believed he was no longer fully focused on boxing. They were right. On February 11, 1990, Tyson traveled to Tokyo, Japan, to defend his heavyweight title against James "Buster" Douglas. Almost nobody gave Douglas a chance. Some bookmakers listed him as one of the biggest underdogs in heavyweight championship history. For most people, the only question wasn't if Tyson would win, it was how quickly. But Buster Douglas had his own motivation. Just weeks before the fight, his mother had passed away. She had always believed her son would one day become heavyweight champion. Douglas entered the ring determined to fulfill that promise. From the opening rounds, something felt different. Tyson wasn't dominating. Douglas fought with confidence. He controlled the distance. He landed clean combinations. For the first time in years, Tyson looked frustrated. In the 8th round, Tyson finally knocked Douglas down. Many expected the fight to end there, but Douglas got back to his feet. He refused to quit. Then, in the 10th round, everything changed. Douglas landed a powerful uppercut followed by a series of crushing punches. Tyson collapsed to the canvas. As he tried to stand, he struggled to find his mouthpiece, desperately attempting to put it back into place. The referee counted to 10. The fight was over. The undefeated Mike Tyson had been beaten. The boxing world was stunned. It remains one of the greatest upsets in the history of sports. Losing the championship was only the beginning of Tyson's problems. In 1991, he was accused of raping 18-year-old beauty pageant contestant Desiree Washington. Tyson denied the accusation, insisting the encounter had been consensual. The case went to trial. In 1992, he was found guilty of rape and sentenced to 6 years in prison. He ultimately served about 3 years before being released on parole in 1995. The conviction divided public opinion. Some believed justice had been served. Others maintained Tyson was innocent. Even today, the case remains one of the most controversial chapters of his life. While in prison, Tyson continued to train. He also converted to Islam and reflected deeply on the mistakes he believed had led him there. The most feared boxer in the world was now fighting a very different battle. When Tyson was released, millions wondered whether he could return to the top. The answer seemed to come quickly. He defeated several opponents and regained world championship belts. For a brief moment, it looked as though Iron Mike was back. But the sport had changed. A new generation of heavyweight champions had emerged. One of them was Evander Holyfield. Their first fight took place in 1996. Many expected Tyson to reclaim his dominance. Instead, Holyfield shocked the world by stopping him in the 11th round. Tyson demanded a rematch. That rematch would become one of the most infamous fights in sports history. On June 28, 1997, Tyson and Holyfield met again in Las Vegas. The tension was enormous. Millions of fans watched around the world. From the opening rounds, Holyfield frustrated Tyson with his aggressive style. Tyson became increasingly angry. Then came the moment that nobody could believe. During a clinch, Tyson leaned forward and bit Holyfield's right ear. The crowd fell silent. Moments later, Tyson bit him again. A piece of Holyfield's ear had been torn off. The referee stopped the action. After reviewing what had happened, Tyson was disqualified. The image instantly became one of the most shocking moments in boxing history. Newspapers across the world featured the photograph on their front pages. Television channels replayed it endlessly. For many people, it overshadowed everything Tyson had accomplished inside the ring. The man who had once been known for unstoppable knockouts was now remembered for one unbelievable act of frustration. His boxing license was temporarily revoked. His reputation suffered another devastating blow. Many believe Mike Tyson would never recover, but his greatest fight was still ahead. For many athletes, the story ends after defeat. For Mike Tyson, it became the beginning of a completely different fight. Although he continued boxing after the Holyfield incident, he was no longer the unstoppable force that had once terrified the heavyweight division. The years of punishment inside the ring, the chaos outside of it, and the emotional weight he carried throughout his life had begun to catch up with him. Tyson still fought some of the biggest names in boxing. In 2002, he challenged Lennox Lewis for the undisputed heavyweight championship. It was one of the most anticipated fights in history. Millions of fans hoped they would witness one final chapter of the old Iron Mike. But Lewis was simply the better fighter that night. He controlled the fight from the opening bell and stopped Tyson in the 8th round. It was a painful reminder that time eventually catches every champion. Outside the ring, Tyson's financial situation was collapsing. During his career, he had earned more than $400 million, enough money to live comfortably for several lifetimes. Yet by 2003, he shocked the world by filing for bankruptcy. How could someone who earned so much lose almost everything? The answer was a combination of extravagant spending, expensive divorces, legal battles, poor financial management, and a lifestyle that few people could imagine. Tyson bought luxury mansions across the United States. He owned dozens of exotic cars. He spent millions on jewelry, designer clothes, and extravagant parties. Perhaps most famously, he kept pet Bengal tigers at his home, reportedly spending thousands of dollars every month just to care for them. The fortune that had once seemed endless disappeared. For many people, it looked like the final chapter of Mike Tyson's story. But once again, they underestimated him. Life tested Tyson in ways that had nothing to do with boxing. In 2009, tragedy struck when his 4-year-old daughter, Exodus Tyson, died after a tragic accident at home. It was one of the darkest moments of his life. Tyson later admitted that the loss changed him forever. Around the same time, he also struggled with drug and alcohol addiction. There were moments when he believed he was destroying himself. But instead of giving up, Tyson made one of the hardest decisions of his life. He chose to change. He became sober. He focused on his health. He began rebuilding not only his career, but also himself. Slowly, the world began to see a different Mike Tyson. The angry young champion who once terrified opponents started showing a more thoughtful and honest side. He openly spoke about his mistakes. He accepted responsibility for many of the decisions that had damaged his life. Fans who had once feared him now admired his honesty. Tyson reinvented himself. He appeared in movies, including the hugely successful comedy The Hangover, introducing himself to an entirely new generation. He launched the popular podcast Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson, where he interviewed athletes, actors, entrepreneurs, and world-famous guests. His interviews revealed a man who had become surprisingly reflective. Instead of talking only about boxing, he spoke about fear, discipline, mental health, failure, and personal growth. The image of Iron Mike was changing. Not because people forgot his past, but because they saw how much he had grown. Then, in 2020, something happened that almost nobody expected. At the age of 54, Mike Tyson returned to the ring for an exhibition bout against fellow boxing legend Roy Jones Jr. Many doubted whether Tyson could still compete. But when training footage appeared online, the internet exploded. His speed, his movement, his power. For brief moments, fans felt as though they were watching the Tyson of the late 1980s once again. The exhibition ended in a draw, but the result hardly mattered. The real victory was proving that the fire inside him had never completely disappeared. Years later, Tyson stepped into the ring once again for a professional event against Jake Paul. Although he was far beyond his prime, millions tuned in simply because his name still carried a level of excitement few athletes in history have ever achieved. That alone demonstrated the lasting impact of his legacy. Today, Mike Tyson remains one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet. His career record includes 50 victories, 44 by knockout, and only 6 defeats. He became the youngest heavyweight champion in history at just 20 years old, a record that still stands. Many boxing experts consider him one of the greatest punchers the sport has ever seen. His explosive style, relentless pressure, and terrifying combinations changed heavyweight boxing forever. But Tyson's legacy extends far beyond championships and knockouts. His life is a story of extraordinary highs and devastating lows. From a bullied child in Brooklyn to the most feared man in sports. From becoming one of the richest athletes in the world to losing nearly everything. From prison, addiction, and personal tragedy to rebuilding his life with honesty and resilience. Few people have experienced as many extremes as Mike Tyson. Ending Mike Tyson once said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." It became one of the most famous quotes in sports history. But perhaps it also describes his own life better than anyone else's. Life punched Mike Tyson harder than almost anyone could imagine. Sometimes he fell because of his own mistakes, sometimes because of circumstances beyond his control. Yet every time he had the chance to quit, he found a way to stand back up. That is why Mike Tyson is remembered not only as one of boxing's greatest champions, but as one of the most fascinating figures in the history of sport. This wasn't just the story of a boxer. It was the story of a man who fought both inside the ring and within himself. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know which sports legend you'd like us to cover next.